Alrighty, so let's begin today, lesson 5, looping. We're going to start with what I said was the simplest kind of loop, and it's called a for next loop, and it's pretty common to most programming languages. Most of the ones that I've seen have some sort of form of a for next loop. Scratch does have it. It's the repeat so many times loop. Okay, so very similar. Once again, Scratch has that sort of bracketing kind of visual structure. To do that in Liberty Basic, we're going to have to use indenting again. Okay, so indenting is going to be important. So if I ever asked you the question, what kind of a for next loop is similar to what kind of Scratch loop, repeat would be the correct answer. Okay, so looping. Often we want to make a section of code run more than once. We often know how many times that we want this to actually happen, or we can get the user to do it, like how many balls do you want to catch, or how many rounds, or something like that, right? This is called a definite loop. Why is it called the definite loop? Because you know definitely how many times it's going to go around. Okay? This was a test question. Give an example of a definite loop. Lots of people didn't know that. Will this be a test question again in the future? Yeah, pretty much. Okay, so a definite loop is a loop that you know how many times it's going to repeat. This time it would repeat exactly 10 times. For next loops work a little bit differently, but they're still known as a definite loop. Okay, so here's a very basic counting program. We want to count to 25. No real reason. I'm sure that many of you can count to 25, maybe some of you even by twos. Little joke there. Small one. Okay. Yes, okay. So as I was saying, we want to count to 25. Okay? So the general syntax of a for loop looks like this. This is the general format. When I say general format, what I mean is sort of the basic structure. Pun not intended. So it would be for some variable, like for count, or for round, or for balls, or for whatever. Okay, for something equals number 1 TO to number 2. And then there's a bunch of code in between. And then at the bottom, to close off the for next loop, you use the word next, and then you have to use the variable. So if you've got for count equals 1 to 10, blah, 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 next, what would you put here? If this variable was count, then this variable must be count as well. And it must be spelled the same. The capitals do matter. Okay, so a repeat loop like this would repeat how many times? Lance, how many times would this repeat? 10 times. Excellent. It's pretty easy, isn't it? Okay. In for next loops, it's a little bit different. It's actually number 2 minus number 1 plus 1. What's he talking about, right? Allow me to demonstrate. If it's for x equals 1 to 10, how many times does it go through? Well, it would be this number minus this number plus 1. 10 minus 1 plus 1 is 10 times. It would go, x would become 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6, and then 7, and then 8, and then 9, and then 10. But if I wanted to have a for next loop that went from 50 to 75, why might I want to do that? Why wouldn't I just go 1 to 25? Maybe you need your x value. Maybe it's an x position on a screen. Maybe you need your x position to start at 50. Liberty Basic allows you to do that. Scratch doesn't. Okay, so if I went from 50 to 75, how many times would that be, Lance? Yes, exactly. This is the part where you got to watch. Okay. I'll give you a chance. Don't worry. Okay, so if I'm going from 50 to 75, I would go 75 minus 50 would be 25, and then I'd add 1 26 times. It would be 26 times through the loop. Why? Because it would be 50 and 51 and 52 and 53 and 54, and if you count those all up, you would have how many numbers? 26. There's a 44 there. I can't count. I need a loop to count. I never noticed that before. Like in 6 years of teaching this, no one's ever spotted that. Thanks for paying attention, Connor. I should do more of that, put mistakes in there and see if people watch. Okay, so the big difference, here's a great test question. Scratch just allows to loop a number of times. Liberty allows a loop counter to start at any value. You can start at 50 and go to 75. You can even count backwards in Liberty Basic. You can't do that in Scratch. Not easily anyways. Okay? You could have something like for count equals 20, 10 to 20. How many times would this execute the loop? Caleb? It's 20 minus 10 is plus 1. Plus 1. It'd be 11. Right? 10, 11, 12, 13. If you count all that, that's actually 11. Okay? So, back to our counting program. How high do you want me to count? I want the computer to count to 50. I want it to print the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 50. Pretty simple. Pretty basic. Pretty useless. What would be the pseudocode? What would be the plan? Well, I would get the number to count to, and let's call that max count. Christian, are you watching? And then I would write something like a for loop from 1 to max count, and I would display my counter, and then I would end the for loop. This is pseudocode. This is not basic code, right? What does it really look like? Well, it looks like this. How about you guys go ahead and type that in while I do my attendance? I'll make that a bit bigger. Okay, so maybe let that be a bit of a lesson to you, that it's always good to, experiment and try. I don't dispute that, but be prepared to suffer the consequences. All right, so you should have seen for count, it asked you how high you want to count to. You entered some giant number for count equals 1 to max count, and then it prints it, and it just keeps going around and around and around, around and around and around. Okay, kind of useless. All right, so here's a practice assignment. I need to zoom out a little bit here so you can see the whole thing. Write a program that will find the sum of all numbers below that value. The maximum value that will work should be 10, okay? And the reason for that is so that you don't do kind of what you just did. If it's greater than 10, the program will not work, and it also forces you to use an if statement as well. So when I say the sum of all numbers below that value, this is what I mean. Okay? If I want to know it for 6, okay, then I want 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus, not times, plus 1. That's what it's got to do. Okay, Lance? Yeah. Sum of all numbers below that number. If I take 6, 6 plus 5 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1. Okay? So I'm going to use a count, and I'm going to be adding on each time. This is what it should look like. This is the practice one. I'm going to do this one with you. Enter a number to find the sum to max 10. I say 5. It counts down. It goes 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and it keeps track of the sum. So the sum of 5 is 5, plus 4 is 9. Lance, 9 plus is, plus 2 is, plus 1 is 15. So the sum of all numbers 5 and down is 15. That's what I want you to do. Okay. So, what if it's greater than 10? You should say something like, hey, I said less than 10. Too bad. Okay. How do we count backwards? Key point right here. This is how you count backwards. You would write something like for count equals 4 to 1, but you have to use the step feature. Step means how much do you want to count by. You could actually get a for loop to count by 5s or 10s or 15s or whatever you want, 17s, doesn't matter. But generally we don't, but if you need to count backwards, you go step minus 1. So we're going to go from 4 to 1, and we're going to count by minus 1s. So the count here will be 4, and then it will be 3, and then it will be 2, and then it will be 1. Okay? All right, I need to talk to you about something that I call accumulators. I don't think it's an actual term. It's something that I made up, but I think it's a good thing for you to realize. Okay, in Scratch, you quite often saw something like this: change player total by 1. That means take whatever player total was before and do what to it? Just add it by 1. If it was 10, now it becomes 11. Liberty isn't quite so simple. You need something like x equals x plus 1. And I think I've snuck that into a program before already, somewhere. I just didn't talk about it. X equals x plus 1. Total equals total plus value. The new value of total is the total plus the value. Suppose total is 100 and the value is 150. What's the new total going to become? Hang on. All right, so as I was saying, if the original value of total was 100 and the value of value was 150, what does the new value of total become? 250. Total equals total plus value. Take the old value, a total, and add on whatever you're adding on. Okay? So that's called an accumulator. Will I use that on a test, that phrase, an accumulator? Yes, I will. Okay, here's the sum of numbers program. Go ahead and type that one in. Notice that I'm using an if and an else. Make sure your end if lines up with your if. Your for and your next also have to line up. I'll give you a few minutes there. Let's have a quick look at this. Here's the code. So we're going to input, enter number to find the sum. We're going to call it max count. If max count is bigger than 10, then I'm going to say, hey, I said less than 10, too bad. Else, if the max count was greater than 10. If the max count is greater than 10, then I'm going to say, hey, less than 10. Oh, you're right. I didn't say that. Oh, gotcha. Otherwise, I'm going to print count. What did the comma here do? You put it on the same line, but it sort of tabbed it over, right? Semicolon puts it right beside. Comma sort of tabs it over, but same line. Fine, you need to put the phone away. Then I'm going to say, now why is this 4 inside, why is it indented here? Because it's inside this else. For count equals max count to 1, step minus 1, so that's my count backwards. This sum, you'll notice, is indented even more. Sum equals sum plus count. What's sum equal to the very first time? 0. So it's going to take 0 plus count, and it's going to print the values of count and sum. And you'll notice that it uses commas here, and that will line it up nicely. And then next count. So it's going to continue going through this loop until count reaches 1. Actually 0. It's going to continue around until count equals 0. And then it's going to stop, and then it's going to end if. And I really should probably have an end here as well at the end. Let's see if it works. Okay? Kind of useless, I get that. But it shows you how the for loop works, and it shows you how the counting backwards thing works. Okay? Okay, I'm going to skip the project part till tomorrow. Here's hand in number 5. Okay, listen carefully. Hand in. Here's the assignment. Write a program that has the computer pick a random number. So you're going to use that same random number generator we used before. One single number. You listening, Christian? Because this is how to do it. And you're not, I can tell. It then allows you to guess exactly 10 times. How are we going to allow it to guess exactly 10 times? Using a, what kind of loop? For loop. Each time it will tell you whether you are too high or too low. If you guess right, you still have to keep going until 10 guesses. How come? Because you used a for loop. Is that going to be fun? No. But we're going to solve it later. We're going to take the same structure of this code, we're going to change it, we're going to fix it so that the loop stops when you get it right. For now, you have to guess 10 times. If you don't guess 10 times, if you don't get it right in 10 times, you just lose automatically. Okay? It should look something like this. You have 10 guesses to guess a number from 1 to 100. 76, too high. 13, too low. 27, that is correct. Too bad, you have to keep guessing. And it just keeps going. It's not a very fun game. Okay? If you were to do it in Scratch, it would look like this. Set random number to pick a random number between 1 and 100. Repeat 10 times. Ask, what is your guess? And wait. Set guess to answer. If guess is bigger than random, say too big or say too small. There's one problem with this code. Can you see it? What is it? There's nothing in here about getting it right. Exactly. You would actually need another if, right? You need another if to make that work. I think my next page is the answer. No, it's not. That's the bonus. Okay. So I'm going to leave that up. Random number, you have 10 guesses. You have to say too high or too low. And if you keep going, you have to keep going until 10 guesses is up. Do you want that screen left up, or do you want this screen left up? All right, we're done for the day.